Hi everybody, I'm Greg Crane, Chad Cunningham with me, and we're here to have a discussion about why you guys are either in our class or thinking about coming to our class. We get folks from all levels of positions within organizations coming, and all of you folks have different concerns and questions that relate to your position, and so we wanted to just kind of have a little Q&A session, bring up some of the questions that we've heard now for many years from the folks within that have those various positions, and then provide some answers that maybe help alleviate some of those concerns. The first one I'm talking about is organization executives. You folks are at the top of the food chain. Your primary concern and the answer within both your organization and potentially the community that you're in is, why are we doing this? Why are we talking about moving to this particular program or this particular set of strategies for responding to this violent intruder event? One of the things we have to be concerned about is the fact that we're actually even talking about this. Is this going to convey to our populations, both internally and externally, that we know we have a problem? And obviously those concerns need to be quickly alleviated, and can be when we just have that discussion about, this is not about responding to a known threat. This is about responding to the potential threat, and we just know that these threats are always a possibility. It's just the culture in the world that we live in today, and the best way that we can have a good response, God forbid one of these events comes our way, is that we actually did some good preparation, just like we would for any other natural disaster. And that is the goal, achieve a level of preparation that we can be assured, both from the people standpoint, that they're ready, but also, as an organization, we want to make sure that we are in line with current standards of care and best practices and all those legal terms, because if an event happens, the potential for a legal event to follow it is actually very probable. So we want to make sure that we're prepared and protected, both from our people being ready to respond if necessary, and then we as an organization to be protected as well.
About how are we going to keep our organization out of trouble? What's our liability toward? Are we having those standards? Are we following that standard of care of what everybody else is doing? And do we have that best program out there for our people to make sure they're safe? We have to have some confidence that the programs that we're looking at are supported by history, by statistics, by research, and be assured over the course of attending our classes, you'll see that we've done that. We've done the research. We've helped establish the new standards of care, and you can rest assured that you'll be in line with the standard of care that you'll be held to. The other part of people attending this class, I'm sure that you're out there, is the implementer, is what we like to call the implementer. And you implementers are out there really wondering and attending our class to see, how are we going to do this? When is this going to take place? How are we going to have the time to do it? And what assets do we need in order to make this program happen? And really, with our new way that we're delivering, our delivery model, for this program is our blended, and that's our answer for really how are we going to do this.
That blended model is what's going to assist the implementer both in getting all of the necessary steps completed and also in doing it in a timely manner. For many years when I started this program, we were an instructor-led only model. People would come in, they would get trained, they would get all their information, they'd go back home, and very much like you did, Chad, train 30, 40, 50, 60,000 people over a number of years. But it's so time consuming. And then with any turnover, now we have people who are not up to speed because they haven't received the training yet. And how do we schedule those people in? It's just a constant battle to keep our organization and the people within the organization trained and up to speed on their preparedness. So even though it took some time for us to get an e-learning course together that I felt comfortable with, I felt wasn't boring. Vicky Shaw, our developer, has done an incredible job in putting together a program that I'm very comfortable with. It doesn't just get the message out there, get the training out there. It does it in a way that keeps people attention. So it's a good learning tool, and that learning tool, it's not a one-to-many. It's a one-to-one, but it's a one-to-one that can happen on those people's time. So as an organization, we just set a block of time, from this date to this date, you people will go online and you'll get that training done. And I don't have to have an instructor standing in front of every single individual in our organization. It lets us get that part of the training out, both very quickly, very economically. There's no, not the manpower time that it takes to get to everybody in the organization. Now we can now use that manpower for other areas. And then also the consistency and the quality. We know that everybody's getting the same information all the time, and that's very beneficial because we have now getting close to 20,000 ALICE instructors around the country, and we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and some of us train better than others, some of us conduct drills better than others, but that classroom theory part, that really is important, that we know that everyone is getting some baseline of instruction, and that's what that does. Folks now that are trained at the instructor level, you get to do the fun stuff now. You get to concentrate on building your scenarios, your practical demonstrations, conducting evaluation drills, the things that we all like to do much more so than maybe standing up in front of folks and lecturing. The instructor level people are incredibly important because you are the face of the program within your communities. So we haven't taken away, we don't feel we've taken anything away from the ALICE instructors. We've tried to give you, we've given you more time to do what you need to do, and that's a very important piece of the preparedness picture.
I totally agree, Greg. As an implementer, I was where you guys have been setting many, many years ago. And I had those same questions as many of you might have. How am I going to do this? I had 35,000 people that I had to train. And it's a rollover, at least 4,000 every year. And I was training this program for over 8 years. And I still didn't train everybody that I wanted to. So our blend,
and that was with a cadre of how many trainers?
That was with 12 trainers that we had. So we had the personnel, but again, as you said, we had to be in front of everybody, and it was very, very difficult for us to get in front of everybody because of time, because of rollover, and exchange. So our blended model, I think, is a great way for us to be able to hit everybody quickly, and then to look at our time span to be smaller that we can get in, because I came from a university, so our time span is that of a 150-minute class, to go in and show the demonstrations and show how to barricade and show how to counter and the effects of a countering strategy in a swarm. So it really will help answer those questions and get the people within your organization trained more efficiently and quicker to be prepared, because if we're waiting to do it, what happens when this event happens and we didn't get to everybody?
You guys and gals are the ones who are going out there and helping integrate the ALICE program into all your emergency operation plans. The resources that we have gathered and produced and have packaged in a way that you've got all the documents that you need. Fill in the blanks so you can start building that library of documents that again, God forbid something happens, we can show what we did. And here's the paperwork, here's our plans, here's our rosters, here's the testing from the e-learning, where we show who all completed it, who took the test, what were their scores, and we've got all that information. And also that implementation package, it just takes so much of the guesswork out. What are all the I's we got to dot and T's we got to cross to make sure we have done this correctly. And now that we've provided that, you should be able to have no problem doing this in an efficient manner. Another level of folks who come to our classes are folks who have to be concerned about how am I going to know that people really have achieved a certain level of understanding? How can I guarantee to my higher ups that, look, the training we did has been well absorbed by folks, they enjoyed it, they learned something, they know something, and we have a sense of achievement that folks are ready. We call you folks, the evaluator. And again, through our blended model, we see primarily two ways that you can have faith that people do have a proper level of achieved a proper level of understanding now. One, the e-learning, obviously that's fairly easy. There's a written test that is scored and tracked and reported on, and you have that documentation to show that people were paying attention and they learned something during that course that they took. The other way is through evaluation drills, and as an ALICE instructor, we'll provide you guidelines for conducting these drills, which are separate from scenarios. I've always seen scenarios as really a more scripted event where we provide people role players, that they will conduct things in a certain manner. But an evaluation drill is pretty much where we're just providing them a stimulus. And then we watch how they respond to that stimulus. And you as an evaluator, that will be part of your duties is conduct those drills, conduct them in a safe manner, make sure you do good safety briefings, make sure everyone knows what's expected of them. But then when the stimulus is giving, your role is then to observe, and we get to see how do people respond to the stimulus, and is it in a way that we would expect them to respond? And if it's not, can they give us an explanation of why they did something different than what we expected? And it could be a viable response. We just didn't think of it that way. But that's your role, to evaluate that response and then critique it. And again, that's documented, and we have further proof that there obviously has been a level of understanding, because when a certain stimulus was given, people responded in a way that we would expect to be an adequate response to the danger that they were faced with. Some of you folks are here just because you want to compare our program to others that are out there, and we're glad you're here. And why ALICE was the standard bearer in this movement from passive static response plans to proactive options-based plans. And now that that's the norm, of course, there's a lot of folks out there now that are teaching similar programs, including the government. But the thing that we have found the difference really about ALICE still to this day is, many of the other programs teach what to do. Run, hide, fight, avoid, deny, defend, and some of the others. But we don't just teach what to do, we teach how to do it and why to do it. And I think that's important, because people need to understand not just what to do, they need to understand what is the objective of doing this. Take into consideration run, hide, fight. I understand why the government did it. They wanted some quick terms that people could relate to. But from an organizational standpoint, how do we incorporate fight? How do we build a training protocol around the term fight? You look at the run, hide video, and it shows a guy getting ready to clock the intruder with a fire extinguisher. Well, how are we going to train that? What's the training regimen that's going to assure us that people know what to do with that fire extinguisher, and they have an expectation what that outcome is going to be? What are we trying to do with that fire extinguisher by hitting him with it? Are we trying to knock him out? Are we trying to just make him mad? What is the objective? Some of the other programs, there's one that actually says, gouge the attacker's eyes. Once again, the training regimen for that is really non-existent. We're not going to be able to create that muscle memory that we're trying to create with these very specific tasks. And that's why, especially in the counter strategies of ALICE, it's very, very general, everyday, simple tasks that everybody already knows how to do. They already possess that skill set. We just provide them how and why they can use that skill set in a manner that will greatly interfere with someone's ability to shoot at them accurately. You know, we always say, I may not be able to get them off the trigger immediately, but I can dang sure get them off the sights immediately. I can get them off a target acquisition quickly and easily. And all those things interfere with shooting accurately, which interferes with casualty numbers, and that's the immediate goal. You know, mitigate casualties is the objective. We can't guarantee zero, but we can guarantee we can mitigate casualties, and we teach people not just the what of how we can do that, but the how and the why we can do it and be successful.
Really, I don't think I want to be that guy that has to go through the training and be the one getting hit with the fire extinguisher every day either. That'd get old after a while.
Yeah. And it's just not a training opportunity. You know, we can practice swinging a fire extinguisher, but until I've actually used it in that manner to try to incapacitate somebody, I don't know what that experience is like, and so I really haven't achieved any level of training. But every single counter strategy and the control strategy that is part of Alice can be both mentally and physically conducted in a training at pretty much the same level as it would be in a real event. So people actually can start building that muscle memory, and they have an expectation it will work because they've actually seen it work.
Absolutely. And really, what always drew me to the program, even back so long ago, was the scientific and the research behind everything. You know, that how and why. Why are we doing this? You know, how does this work? How does our counter strategies work of taking them off the trigger and taking them off their sights? That's what always drew me to it. And
yeah, I think
it's very important.
That's still, now many years later, still the primary difference between us and the other programs. We understand why it works, and we think it's important to convey that to the users. They need to understand not just what, but why, so they can have confidence that in what they're going to do is actually going to be successful. Some of you out there are the stats folks. The research. You want to be convinced through empirical data that these facts are true. These things will work. You got to see the evidence. And again, as part of Alice training and part of the course that you'll be taking, you're gonna get that research and that evidence and that data that all points to why do this, why do a proactive options-based plan, why engage in certain activities. You're going to hear stats from Department of Justice, from Force Science, from people that spent a lot of resources researching active shooter events. And you got Ron Borsch, you got the alert system out of Texas, Dr. Pete Blair, and as well as obviously the federal government. There's been a lot of resources spent on these events, trying to learn from each one, and how do we take that historical knowledge and that research statistical data and use that to build a plan that incorporates that research and providing then empirical data that this will work. For instance, so many people initially had this issue about telling people to evacuate, that they may run into another shooter. But the stats now for 50 years have shown that 98% of the time this shooter is a lone wolf. Well, if you've got that guy in your building, he can't be inside and outside at the same time, and 98% of the time it's just one person. So possibility that there's another one out there, but not probability. And always in emergency management planning, we can only deal with the probabilities. We cannot write a plan and procedure for every single possibility that may exist. Probability, you got a shooter, you got one shooter. If he's inside, he can't get outside. So we go outside because that's the history, that's the statistics. So people who say, well, you don't want to run them outside because there may be another shooter, they don't understand history. They don't have the stats. Get behind a locked door, it'll keep you safe. Well, again, history has shown us that locked doors in active shooter events have been breached. And sometimes people on the other side of those locked doors who thought they were safe were no longer safe, and then were actually victimized. So, people who could, still to this day continue to preach this, get in a room and lock a door, sit in a corner and wait for the cops, they really don't understand the data And again, as part of becoming a House certified instructor, you're going to have that data, and that's helpful then when you go back home and you're conducting your executive buy-ins and your overview sessions. It gives you that sense of that credibility that when you're talking to these folks, you know what you're talking about, and you will.
Well, one group that's still out there might be what we might consider the newbie. You were volunteered to come, or what I like to say is voluntold. And you're trying to figure out is, as I'm going through this, they're going to expect me when I go back to know everything. And how do I get that credibility with my organization and the people around me? Well, the biggest thing is, as a newbie, or as one that's getting into the response plans here, is really to start researching and looking at what you have around you. When you look at researching and what references are out there, you're really going to have to start reading, because you are going to be the main person within your organization once you leave here. So looking at those references, looking at those resources that are available from the state, the government, here at Alice. And again, we help you guys out. I'm sure your instructor this week is going to talk about our website. And if you go on our website, under resources, we have compiled all the information that you need.
In your class, you probably got a mix of folks. You've got some law enforcement, you've got some business people, maybe have some hospital people, school personnel. Don't think because I'm not a police officer, I can't talk about this subject. I mean, we're talking about a training protocol, and anybody can train on the topic. Obviously, you have to be knowledgeable about the topic. So while the police officers in the room may have a better understanding of these events and a response to these events, really that response is going to be the law enforcement response. And that's not what we're talking about in this course. We're talking about the citizen response. You guys are citizens. You're going to be responding to this event, so you can talk about it. You can instruct on it. But like Chad says, you got to build your own knowledge base. And once again, on the resources tab of the website, we've compiled so much data there, and just become a sponge. If you're gonna instruct on the topic, be sure you know the topic. And anytime you have a question or concern, also feel free to contact us. Or if you got local law enforcement that's taking part in the training, use them as a resource. Maybe use them as a partner in your training to help you get this off the ground within your organization. And then you can learn from them, and you can listen to them. And stealing's not bad all the time. And you can steal some information and some key talking points from them that you can glean from their presentations, from the classes that you're sitting in here, through our videos and our website information. Steal all you can, but you can get the credibility to talk about this even if you're not a police officer.